Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of What the Observer Sees. I'm Arun and I have Bob with me. And today we're going to be talking about innovation and design thinking and how it can add real value to organizations. And towards the end, we'll also talk about how we can gamify it, potentially gamify it, right? Today we have a very interesting guest speaker, Seelan Karthi, who is really an expert in innovation and design thinking. And we're going to explore this topic. So, without kind of waiting a bit, let's get straight into it and talk to Seelan. Seelan, welcome to the show. Maybe we can start off with some introductions. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background, your some context about you and how you started to get involved in innovation and design thinking.
Thank you, Arun, and thanks, Bob, for having me to the show. Very good day to all of you listening. My name is Seelan V, Karthi, and it's been 22 years of working experience. But I've done innovation the last 5 years for MNCs, corporate companies around the world. Although during the pandemic, it's very interesting to see how the world has changed the way we operate to reach out. But with technology, we're still doing this innovation the last 3 years, and it's actually peaking. Innovation has become a big thing around Arun and Bob, let alone in gamification. How I got into this is when I worked with some of the MNC companies, I realized that innovation was really lacking in these companies. And the likes of companies that I engaged with previously, one of those that actually, got my whole mind thinking differently was Amazon. It's very interesting that I had this opportunity to work with them as our consultants in 2017, 2017. And I think that's where I thought that, we really need to start doing something in innovation. And that's where, since 2018 until now, I actually work on innovation and design thinking for corporate companies.
Interesting. So I just want to kind of delve deeper. What was the spark in Amazon that really kicked it off for you, right? You mentioned Amazon. What was it that really made you see that innovation could have a real impact in organizations?
I think the way when they were speaking about innovation, the definition of innovation, and I realized that they were all consultants, but again, as the employee of the particular company I was working with, I had to go into the deep dive to look into what Amazon is saying and what we actually had to offer to our customers in the particular company. And I realized that there are many things that you need to gel all together to get innovation as a culture in an organization. And that's where I was part of the innovation committee, looking at the entire process of change for innovation in organization. And that led me to do more research. It took me 5 months to actually do research to realize that what disconnects organization, whether it's MNCs or local companies in Malaysia. And then I realized that what we really need is the entire framework, the process, the structure, the strategy, the people, then the culture changes. And then you have the second layer, which is the design thinking element, which I talk about the 6 I's, the inspiration, the imagination, the ideation, innovation, implementation, and iteration that you need. So I call this the aspirers and the assets working together to spark innovation in companies, let alone the same structure can be built for startups and entrepreneurship as well. So entrepreneurship is a mindset of any employees in the organization to use design thinking, lean and agile to start innovating for the customer's point of view, not from our point of view, always from a customer's point of view.
That is interesting because, what I found on Forbes is that Forbes mentioned that companies fail to innovate, and this also goes back to what you did mention, on some companies failing to innovate because their business models, their organizational structure and whatnot. You find it difficult to adjust to new ways of thinking, and more often than not, this is driven by the uncertainty, the fear. Especially for big businesses, they have more to lose. Sometimes they focus too much on short-term thinking, or sometimes if on the mindset of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You don't need to fix anything that's still partially working and whatnot. So more often than not, we see that big business is much harder for big businesses to go ahead with innovation as opposed to the more smaller businesses. What are your thoughts on that? And aside from Amazon, are there any organizations out there, big organizations which allow for space for innovation, with looking past the side effects of failure and whatnot, so they encourage more innovation?
Yeah, there are many, aside from Amazon, talking about 3M, we're talking about 3M was built upon the concepts of innovation. They fail fast, fail cheap. The Post-it was a failed product, but how it actually turned into a product that we all use today, right? It's not to generate ideas, but it's generate ideas to solve problems. And you got to fail fast, fail cheap to experimentation. So a question, Bob, in terms of, how does big companies, are they really having difficult to actually innovate versus small companies? I think they all have their set of problems. SME companies do have the problems. They don't have budget to begin with, right? They want to get it right. Yes, they're very small in their structure, smaller. It's easier to fail fast, fail cheap. Let's go try something. Big companies are legacy. They've got the budget. But their structure is too ingrained into the old way of doing things, very conventional. That stifles innovation. So they have their business as usual processes, but they don't have innovation processes. So it's difficult to do that, right? It's very difficult to actually ingrain innovation. I can say even only about 5 to 20% of global companies, they're actually innovating. The rest are not innovating at the rate that should be. They could be, but they're not. Because it's huge. Innovation culture for transformation is huge, but they're all using business as usual processes. Good example. If I go to a company, if I ask you, show me your procurement process, they will have it. Show me your process for account receivable, they have it. Show me your process when a customer complains what you do, they might have it. Show me an innovation process. That's where they go. What do you do in innovation? How much budget is released out for ideas of incremental ideas, breakthrough ideas, and radical ideas? This is sort of what you're talking about, Seelan, right? So when it's an incremental, what do you do? For breakthrough, what do you do? These are things that don't have. What is your policies for innovation? What is your LOA for innovation? They don't have this ingrained. So you rightfully said, Bob, corporate companies, huge MNC companies, they are innovating at the rate that it should be. But I tell you, if they have a proper innovation structure built in, a framework, they can innovate very differently with amazing patents. So companies like Pepsi, I follow Pepsi a lot. Pepsi is doing hard big in design thinking, right? In fact, I follow him very avidly in LinkedIn. When Pepsi, took this gentleman in and how they started doing design thing was amazing. And can you imagine Pepsi? If you look at Pepsi's, I would say their banners have changed. The way they reach out to customers is very customer centric. That's because they're using design thinking. Now, design thinking is a way of thinking and a way of practice. Innovation is the outcome. So you may ask me, what is innovation, Seelan, compared to design thinking? Innovation is basically the outcome to bring value to your customers. Don't innovate. Don't invent something, guys. Innovate something. You can invent. I'll give you an example. This is my holder, right? So this is the holder to actually put my phone in. So you invent this thing. But the value is it actually makes my phone stand here. That's the value of it.
Yep.
So whenever we innovate, whether it's through gamification or what, we must always think from a customer's point of view, what value it can bring the customers. That's innovation. So you can invent something. So the specs is actually invented. It's called spectacles, my specs, my reading glasses. But then the invention is basically when I wear it, it's clear. That's value proposition. That's innovation. But when you use the elements of it is actually design thinking, is how you open it up, how do you wear it here, is it light, right? All those are design thinking elements. So great companies like Google, right? Amazon, Facebook, right? 3M, even some local companies here in Malaysia, right? I don't know, in Singapore, some great companies, DBS is ingrained DNA into design thinking. They are where they are today in Euromoney's, the world most digital transform bank in the world, headed by Piyush Gupta, right? It's amazing to see where they're heading towards in innovation.
Right. So then, Seelan, I guess from what I understood, you need to really keep the customer at the focus, right, of any innovation. From my experience, sometimes we look at it from a process perspective, right? So something is not moving as fast as it should, or something is breaking down too often, and we kind of look at innovation from that perspective. But what you're saying is that it always has to be skewed towards the customer's value proposition. Like you're creating something that ultimately brings value to the customer, right? So what are your thoughts whenever, you worked with a lot of organizations in this space? How are leaders in organizations actually talking about innovation? Is it coming from that customer's perspective, or is it coming from, we can save X amount of days by doing this, or X amount of paperwork by doing that? How do you see it being articulated down to organizations?
Leadership or senior management team, whatever you can call it,
Yeah.
I realize that they are still looking at it. A vast majority is still looking at it from what is our revenue, what's our profits, what's our margin, what's our targets. Targets is all about very revenue driven.
Sure.
But we're not talking about the customer experience, the CSATs or the NPS score, the Net Promoter Score, which is very fundamental in any organizations. That has to be a key indicator for success. Any organizations today, Arun and Bob, will not exist without our customers. If there's no customers, there's no employees, and we can't pay them any bonuses, let alone their basic salary. We need the customers. So the fundamental of any business, I run my own company for the last 5 years. And it's about this. It's about making sure you deliver something based on what the customers need. Because only when the customers share their wallet, you have business.
Sure.
But to be resilient and to disrupt the world that we are in, very VUCA and very Barney world, a world which is very brittle, very causing very anxiety, non-linear and incomprehensible, let alone a world that's very uncertain, volatile, complex, and ambiguous. That's done then. Now it's called Barney. We need to innovate from a customer's point of view. So I just watched this article, a video, quicker, 120 seconds video in Instagram about a few days ago. And it says, CEOs are still thinking in terms of revenue, in terms of profits, in terms of very sales driven. Just bring the money in. That's fine. You can only bring the money in if a customer said, I see value to your products, to your services, to your business model, to your technology, right? To your processes. If not, I will not even come and share my wallet with you. Hence, you don't have business. I'd rather go elsewhere because competition is so huge. You innovate, others imitate, right? So we must always look from a customer's point of view, Arun and Bob. That's why C-suites, C-1, C-2 started looking at it. But the interesting part is, how are we doing in today's world? Good news is C-suites are beginning to look at that. They realize that it is not just about businesses only can progress. As you can business growth, sustainable business growth and sustainability is coming through customers. So today we're talking about culture of innovation. We're talking about transformation. I see that, Arun and Bob. People are talking to me more today about, how do we build this entire thing in organizations? We realize that we have done it so much those days, very product-centric, very customer-centric. I call it now, Arun and Bob, we're going to be human-centric. We call it human-centered design. In design thinking, you're going to be human thinking, because at the end of the day, there's no business. Business only comes when you solve problem. If not, you don't have any business.
Right.
That is interesting because I searched up the definition of design thinking prior to this, and the key word for design thinking was human-centered approach into innovation. So it really ties back to what you mentioned, Seelan, on the elements of design thinking, where we hone into the people aspect, what the customers want, and it's like exactly what you mentioned. Customers hand over their wallet. That's how we close businesses, close deals and whatnot. So thinking about design thinking, right? How often how do we incorporate the element of design thinking into corporates nowadays easily, in the sense of, is there a way that we can possibly gamify the act of design thinking, or make it so design thinking is much more appetizing, for lack of a better word, for corporates or organizations out there?
Great question, Bob. Let me take it to two pillars here. One is design thinking, and then design thinking gamification. Through gamification. The good news is the last 5 years, design thinking is so needed in corporate companies, MNCs, GLCs, and Malaysian companies. Not much SMEs. They're not getting there yet. But large companies are working to it. So I'm talking about more than 1,000 employees. They are really wanting it. They're looking at to train entirely the whole company. So I've done last year 1,000, 2,000 over people being trained by design thinking as a culture. Now to get into your question of design thinking, you're right, human-centered design. So companies really want it because it always looks at from a human side, because then we bring value. Now, why is it growing so much, Bob and Arun? Is because what I do is I build prototypes. When we do a program, we just don't go and teach them the mindset of design thinking. We take a real problem and we solve the problem for them in the program.
Right.
which means when they finish the program, they have a solution sitting with them. So currently I've built 584 prototypes for companies. That is about every year, the last 5 years, I built about 110 prototypes, let alone 110, 15. So so we take a real problem, solve the problem, and they can take it on to do validations and even execute it. So I've done about 43 projects where we execute that idea and they see ROI coming in. Some of the things we did, a great example here, I don't mention the company's name, but we did one design thinking project. After the design thinking, we took a design thinking, we did Agile, and from Agile, we went to Lean startup methodology, and we did Agile. The sales went up by 17x, 17%. So 17 times more sales. Global sales increased by just doing design thinking. So I don't want to tell the value. That means if they were using, they were making 1 million, they're actually achieving 17 million right now. That's 17 times more. That's a lot of money, yeah? So that's design thinking. So coming to design thinking in terms of gamification, that's very interesting, Bob. I think we should start doing that. You know why? We did a project last year for a company. And again, I don't want to mention the company's name here. They used sustainability as their pillar of transformation. We used design thinking, and they came up with a gamified learning to spark ideas in a corporation.
Interesting.
But the idea came about when we use design thinking. So we use design. Design thinking is a way of thinking and a practices for innovation. Yeah, innovation is to bring value to your customers. Then you get your ROI. So what was the pain? The pain was, Seelan, we're all going to sustainability, ESG, right? What can we do? So I said, what is the problem? What's the context? What's the expectation? Who are the customers? We understood that. Then we used design thinking to spark an idea. And the idea was gamification to spark innovation in the company. And that's another definition altogether. Gamified is actually an outcome-based, but using games to have an outcome-based learning, right? But to be fun, to be engaging, right? To have reward mechanism. We'll talk about that later, but can be done, Bob, and I've done it before, and that's interesting. And then it's amazing to see. It's like a rat race kind of thing, but they spark a culture of change in organizations. Use design thinking, but to spark ideas using gamification in the company.
Very interesting. I mean, the concept of gamification to teach a certain skill always has a lot of value, because you can see immediate action, you can see immediate feedback, right? The feedback loop is pretty short compared to your traditional kind of classroom-based approach, right? In your opinion, have you seen it being effective in organizations where you have been involved in that innovation thinking process? Because my question is more towards like, how do we get like employees to focus and to really understand the value, right? I think sometimes it can be a very difficult proposition just to get people to focus and to say, this is important for the long-term sustainability of the organization. How do we make it more appetizing, like what Bob mentioned? Like, how do we drive that kind of interest into innovation and design thinking as a concept?
There's 3 areas here, right?
Yep.
The first thing you need to do for employees is you need to have a buying strategy for innovation.
Okay.
The strategy needs to come from top to say, I call it innovation aspirers, to say, hey guys, maybe let's start using gamification to spark up ideas for a corporation. That should be coming from top. Right. Once that is done there, and then you can have a very clear direction and we can spark ideas. Ideas can start coming up from the employees to have gamification. So it has to be both sides. Now, the middle part is how to use gamification to spark ideas in a cup. Are we like stifling? No, let's not do this and all this. Once the top says, yes, let's come up with any ideas, because no ideas is a crazy idea. You got to fail fast, fail cheap. The direction is there. Hey, employees, come up with any ideas. We are looking for this kind of ideas and we'll reward you for this kind of ideas. Have a pitch out day in a company, right? Have a Friday, day that you can just go and talk about innovation in a cafeteria, right? Walk and talk about innovation. Right now, it's just so business as usual. Everybody has to work from 9 to 5, right? And it just stifles innovation. So there are many things here, Arun, yeah? But to just address your question is, I think companies want something different now. Sure. I think what we can do for them is to help them understand the value of gamification is every employee will not take in. You see, your question came earlier was, how do you get employees to buy in this idea of gamification? They will never buy in if the top don't buy in. That's number one. So the buy-in is the top, right?
Yeah.
Now, how do you get the culture of change to gamification? This is what I saw, yeah. What you really need to do is don't get your employees to use, gamification as a no other choice. It has to be you get your employees hear what they have to say, hear what they want in terms of learning.
Right.
So when your employees say, Arun and Bob, our learning is very conventional. There's no time for learning, but I know we have to learn. My nature of job is such, I don't have 3 days to give you even a year. I want it just fast. I want it to be fun. I want it to be this way, but I want the outcome and I want to start doing something. And if you can, so once you hear this out from them, we can build something for them as our personas now, Arun.
Yeah.
So the employees become our persona.
Right.
All right. Once we identify them as a persona and say, what is your problem in terms of learning the conventional way? Then they say, this is our problems. And our senior suites want gamification right now. And I've seen that companies are now asking for gamification right now. Then once they see the value, because we solve their conventional learning problems through learning, then we should what if I build a prototype and I come and show you of how this is going to work? That'll be lovely. You can just show it to me. Then you use design thinking.
Yeah.
You come up with a gamification mechanism, has badges, has stickers,
Yeah.
spark something there, and all the gamification technicalities, right?
Yeah.
But the outcome is it brings value to the employees. Now you don't have to push your idea. They will pull your idea. They say, this is what we wanted. This is what we want. I will use it without you asking me.
Right. So I think what you're mentioning, like the way I think about it is that I think senior leaders also have to look at their employees as customers per se, right? Like
Yep.
they are a form of customer that is requesting a certain type of service in terms of the learning they receive, right? The formats
Yep.
they receive it. So I think it comes back to what you mentioned, like take a human-centric approach. Look at even employees as an extension of probably an internal customer that you serve, right? And see what they need and kind of tailor the learning around them rather than trying to push certain initiatives down without understanding the broader perspective. Yeah. So that's an interesting perspective. And I mean, I don't know, this is kind of a more casual question, but are there any games that you play or that you have seen that actually kind of spark that innovation mindset? Is there anything that you've come across in your years of experience that kind of teach some of the concepts of innovation? Have you ever come across any of those?
Well, I do learn foreign languages.
Okay.
Because when I was going to teach some German students, I took up German using Duolingo. Now,
Duolingo,
that's so you see, again, I don't play games just for the sake of playing them.
Sure.
I play games to learn, but I like it. So Duolingo was exactly what it is. I was a persona. I am a person with a problem, and I see the value of Duolingo to serve me to learn German language.
Yeah.
And I learned it, and it was good. It sparks it. Today you learn this, and here's a badge for you. I felt, hey, that's good. So I'm actually doing something, and I suddenly get a badge that it inspires me to, hey, tonight I actually want to start doing something again. So I go in there and say, yesterday you achieved this much, this is what you do. Well done, Seelan. And I take an assessment there. And it's so fast, in 10 minutes, I learn something and I just take a nap and I sleep, So that is one I use. Is there any other games I play? No, I don't. For me, just the language. So I've learned that.
Sure.
I've also upskilled my Filipino language because each time I train some different, I do that. So also Vietnam as well, Vietnamese language, I use Duolingo. So currently I'm actually just using Duolingo as my gamified learning platform. And it's good because I just find it easy. It's colorful. It sparks me to keep learning. It doesn't let me go. It gets me coming back. And it gives me what I want. I learn the basics and it takes me level by level by level.
Yeah,
and that's what it does.
So I use Duolingo as well to study Spanish because I kind of studied Spanish when I was younger and then I kind of lost track. So I thought, why not I just commit like 10 minutes of my day to kind of keep it up. Interesting. Bob, any other questions? Anything that you want to?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say all of us are adopters of Duolingo right here in this in this call. And also, one game that I would like to bring up as well. So it's a more B2C entertainment as kind of game, but it incorporates actually real life physics when it comes to engineering or structural building in a sense. So this game is called Poly Bridge. Like polyester, like the first poly and then bridge, right? And the key objective of this game is very simple. You just build a bridge so that a car can go from A to B.
Okay.
Or like a car can go A to B, and then a ship can go across it, so on and so forth. It gets more and more sinister as the game goes in terms of difficulty level. It gets crazy because while you can build a simple bridge, but you have to take into account the car weighs this much, the material can only hold this much. So how do you build a bridge to support multiple functions? And if you go online, your build might not be similar to the thousands out there, which they have come up so many different ways. For example, my bridge could be just the standard, just bridge over troubled water, right? And then some people could have like swinging pendulum bridges. Some people could have like, I don't know, the bridge that goes for like one nice circle loop to loop for all that I know, and somehow it works because they are able to support the bridge. Somehow the physics just work, and the physics is quite similar to real life physics. Of course, you have the game element of physics still in play, but it encourages thinking outside the box of just I'm just going to build a bridge to solve the issue right here.
I think riding on to what Bob said as well, that sparks me. In fact, there are many games out there in the market since the days of Monopoly, right? The days of, now we have Risk. That my son is asking me to get him Risk because I think it's good. So these are all games that are used in-house, not in corporate companies, to teach. Now I can share something with you. You just said this rightfully with this strategy game for physics with bridges. One of my family members, he actually is an investor today. He invests in his different homes just because when he was very young, he was playing Monopoly and he learned the art of buying and renting properties through Monopoly game.
Right.
So can you see that? So he is now doing that literally. He learned that art in Monopoly.
Sure.
And today, he's actually doing that in real life. He's got X amount of properties, he rents it out. But you see, that outcome driven has changed the way he think. So I think this is already applied in our homes many years ago, that games makes us become what we are to a certain extent. If you have the passion, this can be applied in corporate companies as well.
Right, yeah. No, I clearly believe that games have a direct way of influencing the way we think. And I think like something as simple as building a bridge can have so many different iterations, right? From one person to the other, we all see the problem slightly differently and apply our own lens to come up with solutions, which are very weird. But I think those are the weird solutions that kind of bring a different flavor. So I think even if you take it into the organizational setting, somebody sitting in a PMO office, a project management office, might think of a solution very differently than a mechanic who is working on a specific function of a process, right? So there are different ways to skin the cat, but I think it's our ability to encourage that, right? That really makes a lot of difference. So yeah, I think we are kind of wrapping up the podcast for today's episode. I just wanted to get a couple of last nuggets of wisdom, so if you were to go into any organization, big or small, and if you were to approach the concept of innovation and design thinking, what's your strategy? Like, where do you get organizations and people, how do you get them to see the value before they kind of go on this huge cultural transformation change? What's the approach that you take to really drive that initial adoption? Like, any quick tips?
The good news is some companies are coming directly to me. They said, Seelan, we need innovation. They've done their own reading. We need to innovate.
Yep.
And when I enter, and then I tell them that we need to do this. So we start a small scale program first to spark some ideas. Then you go like, my goodness, this is so good. We need this on a bigger scale. Then you go like, can you do more people? Then we go into bigger scale. Right again. Then from there, they go into maybe about 100 old people, right? We have different programs. Then from there, can we take into project-based design thinking where we don't step at ideation, we go into development and writing an ROI business case and implementing it. So we take project-based design thinking. Some of them after that don't stop there. They go into can you change the entire culture for us right now? Then we do training for 1,000, 2,000 people, and we also build the entire framework for them, the entire process for them. So how do we start is just to enter and start small, to make them see the ROI of design thinking. Some companies just say, let's just do it big time. But for me, my experience was, let's start small. But the journey in 1 to 2 years, they go like, can we do it big? Because we see the ROI of it. That's how I penetrate, I enter. I wouldn't say penetrate, but that is how I show value to them, because they're my customers, right? So I show value, and then solve your problems.
So quick wins, start small, have quick wins, show a direct ROI, and I think that's the fastest way to convince anyone, right, that there is value. Okay, very interesting. Bob, any last words? I think before we wrap up today's session.
No, I kind of like that. I kind of like that tagline. Start small, get the small wins, right? If it's fail fast, fail cheap, and ultimately get to the goal and get to the innovation part, and encourage people, in fact, to do it. You could start small scale, you could start big scale, but ultimately, as long as you get to the line of innovation and encouraging that element of design thinking within the corporation itself. I like that.
Yeah. And I think the last point I'll add is just keep it human-centric. Like, you focus on the customer, right? That's what I kind of got throughout the entire session today, was like, really think about how it benefits the end customer, the people that you're trying to serve, right? Because that's kind of like the bloodline of any business, right? Having a good network of clients that see value in the work you're doing.